Here in the U.S., American Airlines flights have resumed after a technical issue grounded its entire U.S.-based fleet on Tuesday. Millions of Americans are traveling across the country on Christmas Eve. And that's the latest example of the many flight delays and cancellations the American public experiences. On top of it, airlines can lawfully refuse compensation. Outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden is making a last attempt to change that. And with us to check in on holiday travel is Michael Taylor. He's Senior Managing Director of Travel, Hospitality, Retail, and Customer Service at J.D. Power. Thank you so much for being with us on this Christmas Eve.
Good evening.
Well, Michael, let's start with Tuesday morning's American airline delay. That was a technical issue that seemed to get resolved fairly quickly. But in general, what are some of the top reasons for airline delays here in the U.S.? Is it weather, staffing, something what we saw this morning? Talk to us about it.
Well, actually, the software outages get the most attention because it's a system-wide event, actually, where all the flights are grounded. But that doesn't happen very often, as was mentioned in your previous reports. Happens every 6 months or so. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small. But weather has the biggest impact on delays, followed these days by just the lack of crews that are available to flights. So a flight gets delayed by weather or a software glitch. The other crew that may be taking over on the next leg of the flight, may time out, and that does cause a lot of issues as far as causing delays in the system itself.
And of course, we are at one, if not the busiest time of year these last couple of days. And here on the East Coast on Monday, we saw a lot of delays on Amtrak in the very busy, popular Northeast corridor. Talk to us about the impact on these various delays on travelers trying to get to where they want to be this Christmas holiday.
Well, everybody expects everything to work perfectly, and when it doesn't, they get very frustrated, especially when they're very keyed up. I always say to our clients that when you're taking an airline flight, this is probably the hardest deadline you've got, especially in the travel experience. If you're late for your hotel room, they have another hotel room ready for you. If you're late for your rental car, they just throw you another set of keys. If you're late for your flight or your connecting flight, now you've got problems. And that's what causes a lot of stress. And people feel very helpless because there's no alternatives for them. They can't go out and hire another aircraft like they might hire another room or go to another hotel or get another rental car. So this is what causes the most stress for travelers, is that timing of getting where they want to go on an aircraft.
It's not only that. I mean, a lot of people have plans or tickets to an event or someone's house they need to be at by a certain time. What tips do you have for travelers to try to mitigate delays as much as possible, especially if they're trying to make a hard deadline? Is it easier to travel first thing in the morning? Do you pad your visit by a couple of days? What advice would you tell people right now?
Well, definitely padding your travel by a couple of days does work if you've got that kind of flexibility, because eventually you will get where you're going. Very few people get completely canceled and don't have any alternatives. The alternatives are a little harder to get these days because aircraft are so full, because there's still a shortage of pilots, which means there's a shortage of aircraft and more seats are filled. So if you're trying to rebook, there might not be any seats on the next flight that you want, but within a day or two, you should be able to get to your destination. The best thing to do is really, follow the weather. I mean, it's so simple. It sounds very easy to do, and it is actually easy to do, but people think, oh, things will go right. The snow won't affect my flight, and that's sometimes just not true. That's probably the biggest impact, is monitoring the weather and seeing if that's going to impact your ability to travel on an aircraft. And then the third one would be actually leaving at odd times, either very early in the morning, say 6 a.m., which, by the way, is my preferred time to fly anytime, especially out of the New York market here. You have very few delays at 6 a.m. Compared to 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. During the travel day. So picking an early flight, if you can get up and get to the airport, that's probably going to help you a little bit on staying on time.
Right. Don't plan for a 3 o'clock flight in and out of Orlando during the summer.
Don't do that.
Michael, talk to us about some of the travel trends that you've been seeing, really, especially in recent years post-COVID, with people prioritizing experiences over material gifts. I know anecdotally I hear from people here, once the kids get to be a certain age, instead of staying home at Christmas, they're traveling, they're on a plane, even Christmas morning. What are you seeing in terms of the experiences versus physical gifts?
Well, the internet has had the biggest impact, and people want to be Instagram or YouTube stars, and they're going to places that are very exotic and somewhat off the beaten path. And then we still have over tourism in Spain. We have over tourism in Japan. In certain spots here in the United States, we also have over tourism, meaning that when didn't used to be anybody on the street, when you want to take a picture of yourself or to post it online, now there are thousands of people, quite literally, on some small streets in Japan, or scenic backdrops like Mount Fuji, or the Gaudi Church in Spain, because that's where people feel that they need to go so they get a little bit more views and page views on their Instagram accounts. And that really is one of the trends that we're seeing, is younger people going to specific spots to get pictures of themselves, standing there saying, "Hey, I experienced this, and look at me. I'm here in this really exotic location." So that's probably the biggest trend that we've seen in the last couple of years.
I've even heard of influencers hosting trips where you can go in on a place they've explored and want to sell. How far ahead should someone book to lock in that airline ticket or maybe a hotel amid, we still have some economic uncertainty? How can people save when I know that right now hotels in New York are up to $1,000 a night?
Yes, I can tell you that I live in Connecticut, which is very close by, and I can tell you the hotel rates in New York are just astounding to me these days. You are correct; they go from $400 to $1,000 per night for a normal room or a junior suite in New York City. But your original question is, how far in advance should you book? And really, it depends on the peak times. The peak times are still going to be in the summertime for most of the destinations that people want to go to. Anywhere from 3 to 6 months in advance is probably going to get you the best deal, and also allow you to pick the seat that you want if you're going to pick a ticket that allows you to pick a seat. And if you have a basic economy ticket that doesn't allow you to pick the seat, you really have to have that expectation in mind that you're going to sit in the middle seat no matter what when you get on that aircraft.
What about the environmentally conscious traveler? I brought up Amtrak at the beginning of our conversation. The summertime, there was a lot of issues with the infrastructure and some delays. We saw something similar with the cold weather and some backups on the Northeast Corridor on Monday. Could we ever see a rise in train travel in the United States? What kind of trends are you seeing with Amtrak?
Actually, we're not seeing that big of an uptick on train travel here in the United States. It's still mostly by air or by a person's personal car. So I'm not seeing any trends on the train side of things. Although there are, again, influencers who take those train rides and do a kind of a weblog along the way for their journey, which they think makes good content for viewing. So there is some of that, but it's really not having that much of an effect, train travel versus aircraft travel. Aircraft travel still by far and away has the highest demand it's ever seen in the history of aviation.
Michael Taylor, thank you so much for that insight. Really appreciate those tips, and have a happy holiday.
You're quite welcome. Merry Christmas.